anticipation is peaking because we know they are coming. Like storm clouds gathering, the looming threat of the Vikings is upon us. In this preview of the upcoming Warsails DLC, we'll take a deeper look at the Nords, their units, the strengths and weaknesses of their forces, and show you the best way to smash the enemy to pieces on the battlefield. Buckle up.
Alright friends, welcome back again to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment. Our YouTube channel is dedicated to all things Bannerlord related, and the Warsails DLC is very close to a release. However, for those that are impatient, we're going to have a bit of a preview in today's episode. We're going to talk about what has been released so far, and then we're going to actually do some tactical guides featuring Nord units. Alright, let's get started. Now in today's episode, we are going to cover two major areas of potential defeat for the Nords: entrenched archers up on a hill and heavy cavalry charges. We will also explore siege defense later in this episode. So we still don't have all the details, but we obviously know the Nord infantry is going to be beastly. Ultra tough spear infantry, including the tier 6 Huskarls. Mixed in with their infantry will also be Marines, which fight better on the ocean, and two types of tier 5 shock troops: an axe wielding berserker and a long polearm wielding Ulfhedin. Both are likely to be very fast moving units with weak armor, and consistent screenshots show the Ulfhedin especially wearing a wolf's head and cloak. Extremely weak armor. That means these units will need to be used well for them to be fully effective on the battlefield. Now, there are a few things that frustrate or intimidate players more than facing a line of Battanian Fiend champions or other good archers high up on the hill in an entrenched position, raining javelins and arrows down on you while you try to close. Well, this is going to be an important skill for you to master playing the Nords, because this is going to be the process much of the time as the enemy tries to avoid getting into melee, while your job will be to try to get into melee. It's basically going to be a continual dance. Without cavalry and with mediocre archers, it's going to be essential that you master tactics and movement of your units so that you can close to the enemy and annihilate them with your foot troops. In this next section, we'll take you to a battle and show you precisely how to do that. And we're gaining on them, but it's slow. And hurry up here. There we go. All right, now, yeah, we're still gaining on 2.5 to 2.3. Come on, catch this guy, Sarandon. I'm trying to kill you for YouTube. Come on. All right, here we go. All right, we got this guy with this bad mustache. The penalty for that terrible mustache is death. We're going to sentence this guy to death. Make sure we have our fast banners here. Eric the Red, of course, will lead our fastest division of Huskarls. Make sure we have throwing weapons too. Anytime that you're fighting an enemy that has lots of ranged units, as you're closing, you really want to pelt them with javelins. Javelins are kind of the anti-archer because you hold your shield up, you throw your javelin, you kill somebody, meanwhile their arrows hit your shield. It doesn't always work like that, but it's a pretty good proxy. It's a pretty good rock, paper, scissors, right? Archers kill regular infantry, but skirmishers kill archers. Now we've got this shock troop captain. I think we want to put a fast banner on him too as well. Let's see what we got here. All right, here we go. 25% increased movement speed. That's not the best movement speed, but that'll still allow those guys to close. And since those guys have no shields, it's even more important once we get them out from behind our shields here. Now they're probably going to play defense. If they don't, of course, it will kind of defeat the purpose. But they're archer heavy, we're attacking, and of course, as we saw before, Sarandon knows the penalty for that mustache is death. So let's close in on him here and administer mustache justice. Now we've got these stupid nobles with us. I needed them with us here just to make the size of this army. We're just going to put them in the 7th Corps. We have no cavalry at all, right? Just those nobles that are on horse. And if for some reason a horse or two sneaks in here, we'll just have it retreat from the battlefield. We actually have 100 archers. That's the most archers we've had in a long time, but it's still 75, almost 80% infantry. And of course, very much heavy with Nord units, right? We've got the 1st Division is going to play defense. The 2nd Division is, I would say, 70% Huskarls, right? And we want to make sure that those 4 buttons are clicked. That way, that division is fast, right? The Huskarls have the fastest movement, super high athleticism. These guys are probably next, right? The Ulfhedin, these guys are going to cruise right along, although you see we have some scrub troops mixed in as well. We got captured a little while ago, and we're still rebuilding things, but it's starting to look like a real army again. So 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 6th, those are our infantry divisions. The 6th is a skirmisher division. So when we zoom in here, we want to see lots of throwing axes and javelins sticking out of these guys' little back shoulder holster there. And that's indeed what we see. So the key here with archers is to surround them and close. We're basically just going to surround them 3-4 different sides. If we're lucky, we can get troops behind them even, so they can't retreat, they can't regroup. And then you just close the vise, right? We're going to squeeze until their eyeballs pop out of their head. We do have enough archers to provide a little suppressing fire as we move in, but the biggest key is going to be our shield walls. So we're going to move in slow, methodical shield wall formation. And indeed, look at that. They have 320 archers. I can't see yet, but I can almost guarantee you they're going to be scurrying to some high ground here as they look for a spot to try to shoot us. That's their only chance to succeed. Ironically, the power bar favors them, even though they ran. That happens sometimes, right? That's just part of Bannerlord. Sometimes your opponent has technically a stronger army, and they will still run, right? It can be by a very small margin sometimes. Now, we're going to fight this on foot, but we will also extensively use the RTS mod to speed things along. That said, I don't anticipate a long battle here, right? We're going to close in a relative hurry. Look how fast Eric the Red is moving now, right? With his athleticism and perks, even with some good armor and a shield, mind you, he's starting to cruise around. So now I'm going to put 1 archer division over here on our left, 1 archer division towards the center, and the 1st and 2nd are going to go, let's see, if I do that, I think 1st and 2nd towards the front, 3rd and 6th we will stick towards our left. And we're going to spread out this formation the closer we get. In other words, right now it basically looks like 2 flanks. We're covering about 180 degrees of the battlefield. As we get closer, we will spread these guys even further, so there's no escape, right? The enemy archers, they want to kite. They want to get to a location where they're not being mauled by Nords and axes are being slashed across their chest. Our job is to do the opposite, right? So, a little game of cat and mouse here. Unfortunately, we're the cat. Start moving these guys up. 70, 140. We don't have very many on this side, but I think it's going to be sufficient. They've got shock troops. They'll be able to close in a hurry. Keep moving these guys up here. The 3rd Division is going to be key. They're going to do massive damage to archers. Shock troops really are one of the most difficult units to use in Bannerlord. Shock troops, just to remind people, maybe not that experienced, that's a unit that does not have a shield. So it's absolutely essential you use terrain and you keep them behind other shielded units. Now, this is another good example where you have to use intermediate tactics to have this kind of success. If we made a frontal assault here, we would suffer huge casualties. They have an elevated position and they have a huge amount of archers. They're also countercharging with cavalry here. They're going to drill their lord right in the back. And you know, this is the kind of battle where you might even lose if you did a frontal assault. That's what's supposed to happen, statistically, historically, is the archers in an elevated position shell you, then their infantry countercharges, then their archers kite some more. Well, we're going to nullify several different parts of their plan here. Get up here with this shock troop division. So you can see these guys no shield. We've got to be careful with these guys. A few of them do have javelins, so that's going to help, right? I've got my own javelins. I haven't really been using javelins much in this campaign, but obviously a situation like this dictates it, right? You're not using some of your normal weaponry in this system. The key is ranged weapons. That guy got decked. This Ghoulam fighting for the wrong side there, dude. All right, so down on the far side there, we've got 2 divisions, and up here 2 divisions, right? So we basically have 2 different flanks covered, and on the far side over there, we're just going to keep pushing those infantry further around the enemy, right? We're basically going to point to the other side of the enemy forces with those units. Now we're being shelled, but we've got a good shield wall here. And our shock troops are getting a little overzealous here. That is a lot of arrows. Now, shields or squares are good, but keep in mind, squares move very slow, right? If you're moving up here in squares, you're going to get pounded. Let's get this division tucked in over there. Those guys can actually just push in right now. I don't think the enemy can fall back from here. I think we're near the back of the map. Even so, we're going to cut off their access, right? This 6th Corps, bunch of skirmishers, right? Just about to unload javelins. Give them hell, right? They're just going to dump javelins into the enemy. On the other side, of course, troops are pouring in, and the enemy's absolutely pinched here. You can see them firing javelins, and you can't miss here, right? Our troops are not going to miss. We actually have decent suppressing fire from our archers. I can see the arrows raining overhead here. Maybe we'll do a custom battle in addition to this for an episode, because some players are like, I can't tell what's going on. But what we've done is close in 3 sides here, and now the skirmishers are behind the enemy, preventing any kind of retreat or regrouping. When they get reinforcements, it's not going to be here, right? Because these guys are going to be completely surrounded. Break out the axe here because it's time to tear some limbs. First and second division are boring in on the other side, and the death spam is flushing pretty green. Now, they have a lot of troops here. We were never going to fight this with no casualties, but I'm confident this is better than like an auto-resolve would have yielded. And there's a huge flush of green. That's probably our 2nd Corps. Those are our Huskarls moving in for the kill. Trying to think, you know what we can actually do? I can actually do just an overhead RTS of this. There was a save game not too long before this battle with the bad mustached Sarandon. So they got reinforcements somewhere. Hold down the alt button. Okay, they're right down the hill here, 167 troops. I see guys with clothing on. They got some peasants at the back of their army. Not a good thing for the enemy here. And they're trapped by archers on the other side, so they're surrounded here. And this is another advantage of the flank. By flanking hard and putting troops behind the enemy, they're now encircled. The enemy here could not be in a worse spot. Our infantry bores in on him while our archers shoot him in the back. And Eric the Red, the murderer, just tears through the ranks, and heads and limbs go flying. Cavalrymen are dismounted, and blood splatters across your monitor. Apologies for all the blood that just splattered across your TV screen or your monitor. That was a very gruesome ass whipping. All right, so let's look at the stats here briefly. We got a nice, beautiful sunrise or whatever the hell for this victory. And I think I will try to reload this, and we'll do like a 3-minute fast version of what we just did with the RTS overhead. Benefit some of the guys who are less familiar with flanking, less familiar with tactics and unit division, and we'll do an expedited version of it. Less than half of our army is injured or killed. We'll take that. And we'll just start pushing in now. We'll use the RTS mode extensively. And just for your sake, because it's not always easy to see the icons, on the left over here, that is the 6th and the 3rd Division. Again, just to reiterate, in case you've forgotten, that is our skirmisher division, guys with javelins, throwing axes. That's the 6th. And the 3rd is our shock troops. That 3rd Division will stay behind the 6th much of the fight. Now, a lot of people think the RTS mod is an advantage. I actually find it to be a disadvantage because you can't see the angles of the terrain very easily. Of course, you can zoom in and do so, but I find it much more intuitive to do it down on the field as a commander. This is a great tool, though, for a lot of newer players to learn. Maybe command is not your bag. This is a pretty good way to learn. And as you can see from this overhead view, we're moving in hard to the enemy's right flank, our left flank, with 3 divisions. The 4th Archer Division, the shock troops, and the skirmishers. In the center, shields, because those are the units that are visible to the enemy. I'll reiterate that point in a second. On the left flank, we have a bit of a blind approach. The enemy can't see us until we're close. Over here, already in shield wall, right? Because the enemy's actually on the other side of the rock this battle. That's okay. We can still flush them, I think, towards our left. We're going to move our archers up, of course, behind the infantry. And it's very systematic, right? We're just slowly closing the vise here. You move 50 to 100 meters at a time is what I would recommend with your positioning. You can tell guys to charge at this stage, but you'll have all kinds of problems. Your skirmishers will move slower than your shock troops will get shot to pieces, etc. Your units won't attack together. You want to do this methodically if you want to have a high rate of success. Now this battle, relatively easy, right? We would probably win this battle with just a few simple tactics. Even just using shield walls and positioned archers in a good spot, we might win still. But we don't want to just win. We want to dominate, right? Maybe you guys, build a deck in the back of your house where it's like falling apart and stuff like that. I want to build a nice deck, something I'm proud of. And just like in real life, where we want to succeed and reach a high level of whatever we're doing, that's how I aspire to play Bannerlord. And hopefully these guides help you get to that stage. So the archers, I did tell them to charge. We don't have very many archers. And what charge does with the archers, it doesn't make them run up in melee, but they try to get line of sight. And that's helpful here because this way they're pushing forward and providing a little bit of cover fire for our troops. Now, we're going over the ridge here, right? You can see the enemy can start to see us. We're getting shot. So this is where it's imperative that that 6th Division stays in front, and they have two big roles at the beginning here. Intercept cavalry, because your shock troops are vulnerable to cavalry, and, of course, intercept arrows. They're defense, right? This is your shield. These guys behind them don't have shields, right? So we want to make sure that they're behind them. Now, if some of them slip forward occasionally, it's okay. Just make sure most of that shock troop division is behind your shields. If the cavalry charge, you want to pay attention to it, right? If it's a full flushed charge where they're deep in your ranks, you want to pay attention to it. On this right side, we don't give a shit if cavalry charge, right? That's our best, strongest, heavily armored infantry, our Huskarls. Their cavalry is virtually worthless because of this situation. Now look at the positioning there, right? We're cutting them off at the rock. These guys move in. And again, cavalry's charging here. The other thing you can do too is you can charge at this stage, right? All your little Ulfadins will come up here. They're actually kind of big. They'll start swinging their big pole arms or throwing javelins, and the enemy gets insta-killed. Skirmishers still leading the way. Now, you can open fire here, but I would prefer you get a little closer. I think the optimal range for javelins is about 30 to 40 yards. They'll throw them at like 70, 80 yards, meters, but they do much more damage at a distance. Now, again, just closing here, our 2nd Division is making sure the enemy can't kite. Can't get around the corner here with these guys charging. If your enemies scatter all over the place when you charge, you can always redirect them exactly where you want. Over here, we're going to start cutting off the enemy's rear, right? We want to make sure they can't kite and they can't get any reinforcements behind them, right? So we're just going to put these guys to the enemy's rear. The 3rd Division charges. The 6th Division can be told to open fire. They're now flinging javelins into the packed ranks, and the Ulfadins do major damage once they get up to the enemies. They're going to be a blast to use in the DLC. Skirmishers firing away. You can charge too. There's a few guys in there that are probably low or out of ammo. And this battle is basically over. The enemy's completely encircled. A human player would never let you do this, you would hope. But the AI is pretty ready to let you just surround them. Archers are shooting. It's a little bit chaotic. It feels worse. It feels sloppier than that first battle. And it might just be my imagination. It is harder, you know. Now, here's another tip. See all these archers kind of holding their ridge proudly? Fuck them, right? Let's send our infantry right into the mix. When they charge, they'll fight whatever's in front of them. I would rather use just sent your division directly into their masses, and it caused them to rout. It caused them to panic. They're now trying to get out. Well, we already encircled that spot, right? Our Huskarls butcher everything that tries to run. That's the whole point of encirclement. Just like Napoleon at Ulm. It's an annihilation of the enemy's entire force, right? General Mack in the Napoleonic campaign before Austerlitz got outmaneuvered, and his entire force had to surrender to Napoleon. Now they got the peasant brigade here at the end of this episode. But there you have it. We'll run through the end of these peasants here, get you a final tally, but it should be pretty close to the first battle. I think maybe even we did a little bit better, but something like 2/3 to 3/4 of our forces left in a battle where the enemy should have had every advantage. The enemy piled up here in a big line of carcasses. All right, now let's help you survive and defeat heavy cavalry with your Nords. Now, some people are scoffing on the surface saying, yeah, our infantry butchers cavalry. Not anymore. Not with the 1.32 changes. At least, more accurately, infantry that's not being used well or correctly. In the open field, especially if your units are separated, heavy cavalry, especially those that can spear, that can couch lance, will obliterate your infantry, especially shock troops, because they don't have a shield. This is a great change, and quite honestly, we can take some credit for it, as we were part of the people who were complaining nonstop about how weak heavy cavalry were. Now they're beastly, and I think it's a great change, right? A tip of the cap to Tail Worlds here. Now, I tried over and over again to get a battle in that campaign where we have Eric the Red against lots of cavalry, and I couldn't find it. Fortunately, we could do a nice simulation with the custom battle here. So what we've done is a very lopsided battle where the Vlandians are attacking us, and we have these Nordic units, right? We have the Long Axemen, we have the Huskarl. Both sides have tier 4 through 5, or tier 4 through 6, I guess. We're fighting in the open field. Again, we're outnumbered about 40 or 50%. And we have a little bit of archers, right? It's mostly infantry. Now let's let the sergeant butcher the first battle here, just to show you how lopsided this is. That's not actually the worst strategy, right? They're forming a ring. At least they got a good initial death spam, as the cavalry really didn't do major damage, but they continue to cycle charge, and now the infantry just arrived on the other side. And it looks like it's going to be close. I'm actually kind of impressed with how well the AI defended here. Now they're starting to rout. Looks like their ring broke down, and that's that. So the AI can't win this battle, not surprisingly, right? They're outnumbered badly. Let's see what we can do here. All right, well, what we can do is we can run lots of tests. We have the RTS mod. This allows you to speed through battles, and I am very, very fortunate that I can play Bannerlord at work. I am a full-time firefighter, if you didn't know, and one of the nice advantages is that when we're not out pulling cats out of trees and saving little old ladies because they fell down in the bathroom, we can do Bannerlord. We can play Bannerlord and do lots of tests. Now, there's all sorts of tactics that I tried in this scenario. Again, the scenario, just to refresh your memories, being outnumbered 40 to 50% by Vlandians with lots of heavy cavalry. We tried a checkered board defense. We tried a circle with a square out in front of it. I tried putting my archers in odd spots, and the AI actually did a pretty serviceable job seeking and destroying archers with the heavy cavalry. Again, heavy cavalry is not to be trifled with the new change. At the end of all these tests, though, we did discover a few things that worked really well. Almost all of them worked decently, but this was probably the best. A circle with a square with a couple archers on both sides. And we will go ahead and give you a full walkthrough for this, because I think if you're facing a lot of heavy cavalry, this is probably what you want to do. Now, a few things I found out. First, it benefits you to have skirmishers in a ring formation, because they do throw javelins at the guys that are in the ring, right? You'll get troops that are on the other side chucking javelins into the center of the ring. They'll sort of turn their body a little bit and chuck their rings. But a square out in front is really what makes this work. The majority of the initial charge just dead ends on the square. Then the enemy starts to get caught up in the circle. That whole time they're getting attacked. They're having javelins thrown at them. And just as an added feature, I like to charge with that square once the enemy's movement is killed. That's the key, is to make sure the cavalry's not moving. Now, another thing I tinkered with is putting a few archers in the middle actually really helped. Not only did they shoot the enemy at point blank range, but the enemy seemed drawn even more towards the center of the ring. So what you have is a square out in front. About a quarter of our infantry, 2/3 to 3/4 of our infantry is in that circle. There's a little tiny archer division tucked in there. My AI guy is trying to get inside the circle. He's like, let me in. You can see again, we're badly outnumbered. And then 2 archer flanks. And you notice hardly any cavalry went to the right and none went to the left, right? Now the archers are in here shooting away. And look at that death spam, right? This is a battle where the AI got massacred. And we steamrolled them that initial charge. Again, the enemy's getting stuck and caught up. The dead horses start to get in the way. The archers are getting mauled outside the circle, right? But there's a whole lot of enemy troops that are getting killed as they try to cycle. Now they're coming back the other way. Again, they get stuck on the ring. These archers are still shooting guys at point blank range. That's where you want to be too, by the way, if you're the commander in a situation like this. I think it would be very fun to take on a big force and see how you could do. Now, the enemy infantry just arrived. You want to charge with everybody here. You want that circle to change formations because you want to prioritize destroying the enemy infantry that just roared up, right? They had a lot of infantry in this scenario as well. Eventually, though, our stronger Nord infantry saves the day, blows out all the infantry, and now there's almost no cavalry in the field, right? There's a handful of horses here and there knocking guys over and whatnot, but we just wasted their infantry. Their cavalry's all but gone. Now, the last thing you want to do is notice our troops are sort of running sideways here. You say, what the hell's going on here? Why are our troops routing? Well, you know what's happening here? These guys are actually chasing enemy troops that are routing. It's not terrific AI coding. There's a battle still going on. Some of your troops are pouring up. Meanwhile, you charge, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm charging. There's troops heading over here. Let's go get them. And your troops are chasing these guys literally off the battlefield. Meanwhile, your mates are getting killed behind them. So make sure you point them behind the enemy. Make sure you gather your units up and finish the enemy off. 240 survivors in a battle the AI got shelled. Now, during all this testing, I was curious of one more thing, so I ran one more test. What happens if you have just a handful of cavalry? Well, I was able to get better results. The bottom line is that cavalry is still the best way to stop and slow down enemy cavalry. I mean, look at that shit. The enemy just stopped dead on our cavalry ring. So what I did is an interior ring of skirmishers tucked in behind a ring of cavalry with a square out front and archers to the flank, and it was exceptionally, consistently better than just infantry. So that's something to keep in mind. Just because the Nords don't have cavalry doesn't mean you don't want some in your army. All right, last episode we covered siege assault. Now we will do a siege defense with this infantry heavy Nord force. And I'll take you to live narration. I guess I could dump some troops, but you know what? I actually have no idea how this is going to go, right? This is a weak castle. The Nords are, it's sort of an unknown when it comes to defense, primarily because, of course, the normal way you win siege defense is archers. We do have a fair amount of skirmishers, and I must say, right, the proxy for this to the actual DLC is also a little bit of an unknown. Why? Because we don't know how much javelins they're going to have. We don't know if they're going to have good archers, great archers, bad archers, etc. Now, this is a little funny side effect. In order to make this Nord campaign, we used a console here, took over the kingdom, and then kicked Ragnvad out. That's kind of funny. Monchug and Ragnvad are both sieging, and a nice little extra treat for this siege defense. Hopefully we can make this part of our guides that we're creating. In fact, you're probably watching this for one of our guides. All right, we've got 324 troops. We lose 33 getting in. We're outnumbered a little less than 3 to 1. I suspect this is going to be on the easy side, but let's see what it looks like. Again, very few archers. 44? We have almost no archers. We have 44 archers. So it's going to be interesting, to say the least, right? You're not defending with, the walls, that's for sure, with 44 archers, right? They would all get killed. This Nord force is going to encourage people even more to use the same defensive structure that we show on the channel. Now, there's kind of an eerie sci-fi light here, and what do they have here? Okay, they got a siege tower over here on the left, and no siege, I don't see, okay, so they have siege ladders on the right. It's this tri-folded kind of unusual, this is a really unusual castle, and it's not great for defense. But I still think we can make it work. 1, 2. We've got, let's see, how many? Probably want to do 3 or 4 archer divisions. We only have 45 archers. Normally, I would run 4 archer divisions, but with so few archers, I think we're going to have a couple skirmisher divisions instead. And again, that's one of the unknowns, right? Do the Nords have a lot of javelins? I, for one, really hope that they have tons of throwing weapons, because otherwise, I think they're going to be, I dare say, one of the weaker kingdoms in the game. That'll be really ironic if it's this big, bad Norse. They come into the DLC and they're actually kind of weak because they don't, they don't have throwing weapons. If they don't have good throwing weapons and their archers aren't amazing, what do they have, right? What they have is they have cannon fodder. They're going to get destroyed. Cavalry is going to charge them down. Archers are going to shoot them to pieces. Horse archers are going to circle them. The Battanians are going to chuck javelins into them until they look like a pincushion. It's not going to go well. All right, so first, second, of course, a huge square at the gate. And this side over here where they have the tower, I'm anticipating destroying the siege tower. We have a fire catapult. I think we'll be able to do that. Hopefully we can dump a bunch of fire catapults into the enemy. I've got this 3rd division. Almost always when I do siege defense, I like to have a shock troop division. We've also got a 4th division that'll probably be auxiliary. Now the walls are all broken. I hadn't noticed this. That's going to make it harder. We could try to take advantage with archers there. At least there's 3 layers of crenellations to get to those guys, but they might also get shot to pieces here, right? We're facing a lot of Khazate. The Khazate tend to have a lot of archers in siege because of all their horse archers. We've got, let's see, we don't really have good captains here either. We must have some injuries. I'm not sure. Oh, I've got a whole nother screen. Never mind. All right. Yeah, this is a tough one. First, there's this stupid rock. They should have chiseled this rock away or turned it into a tower or something like that. That's where they should have built the main gate. Now it's just in the way. We got to cover this back angle over here, so we'll put some archers there. We're also going to have to do a lot of this just with brute power, right? We're going to have to charge a lot with infantry. Fortunately, we have a lot of infantry, right? It's basically the opposite ratio that I would suggest for keep defense. I would suggest 60-70% archers. We have like the opposite. In fact, we have more than 80% infantry. We have like 90% infantry. Now, I think the other side here probably makes sense. That way we can kill that siege tower and then drop fireballs down on the enemy. 2, 3. Probably doesn't matter, this last one. We'll just throw it any old place. Now, for sure, one of the things I'm going to do is we are going to use a couple other campaigns I have. In fact, I think we're going to revert to 1.2 and use this mod for some epic siege to see what happens with the Nords in huge siege defenses. Of course, more interestingly, I want to see what happens with a siege assault, or more accurately, a siege defense, where the Nords are attacking us, right? We will use one of our campaigns. We'll have a little side branch, and whether it's Hugh the Hammer or Baron York, of course, if you guys care, you guys could put it in the comments, whether you want to see the Baron or Baron York or King Hal or whoever, anybody from our famous campaigns defend against the Norse, and we'll try to get a few episodes of that in here, right? With these ultra heavy duty infantry, it's not going to be super easy to defeat them. 6th, 5th, 6th. Sorry for the slow setup here. Sometimes you want to take an extra second. All right, so 1st Division closing off the gate. 3rd and 4th down here. Probably going to have to leave with those guys, or more accurately, they will be freed up. I should be able to destroy that siege tower. And we've got more absolutely spectacular lighting. Tail Worlds, you know, for all the people that want to just get on Tail Worlds junk for this and that and bugs, and sure, there are all kinds of problems with Bannerlord still. This is still one of the greatest games ever made. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. The graphics are incredible. The atmosphere and the feel of it is awesome. The intensity is awesome, right? When you get a great battle in Bannerlord, there's nothing like it. So obviously the big complaint is that it's not finished, it's not polished. Well, they continue to work on it, right? Just hang out, right? Just they might end up making one of the greatest games of all time. Now, we drilled that siege tower there. We only need one more hit here, and get out of my way, dude. This is my catapult. I don't think we can really hit a lot of other troops here, and I'm kind of eager to hit some troops so that we get Eric the Red's engineering up. It's really weak still, 116. I would love to, you know, drill a bunch of troops. We can hit the troops next to the siege tower a few times. That'll help. Except I was too accurate. We already destroyed the siege tower. That means they're not gonna be coming up to this side at all. Our archers up there are getting shot to pieces. So this is the easy way to micromanage them. Oh shit. We get a shot is just to tell them to fall back, and then once they're out of sight, tell them to stop. If you don't tell them to stop, they will retreat to the central keep and you don't get them back, right? So it's a good way to retreat troops. Just make sure you follow it up with a command to stop. Once, you know, if you have units on the wall that are being smoked. And this character feels like he's cracked out. We've got some perks, but I swear he's got like an extra Nord perk or something like that. I mean, we don't actually have any mods affecting that. There are very few mods that actually work for 1.32, but he's seriously, he's running around like an Olympic athlete. I mean, he's carrying a fireball and running like 20 miles an hour. He's got a speed banner. That must be what's going on. I mean, he's cruising. We get our throwing skill up here with some fireball throws, of course. Be nice to get his throwing skills to 275. We're going to keep him throwing axes. We may use javelins from time to time, but we're going to spec this guy towards throwing axes. There's a lot of guys who've written on episodes, they're like, hey, I know throwing axes need a boost or something like that, but you're also using the wrong perks. Use the right perks. Use that perk where it does triple damage to shield. Use all the perks where it helps all the guys in your division. And then come back and say throwing axes suck. So I anticipate a week or two from now coming back and telling you fellas that throwing axes still suck. But at least we're going to test it more thoroughly. Right now we're just sort of shooting from the hip with limited experience. It's true, I've never taken a character to 300 skill and then used throwing axes because it just seems like it's not close. I really struggle as to what throwing axes are better at. People are like, wow, it destroys siege better. Well, that's what catapults are for. I think if you're destroying siege with throwing axes, you've done something else wrong, right? There's all these rocks to throw. I just don't need to try to destroy siege weapons with my throwing axes. You get, let me just see if I understand this right. You get less ammo, right? That's correct. You get more javelins, or at least it's, you get 7 with a large bag of javelins. I think like a legendary bag of throwing axes. Get out of the way, fellas. God, how many are there? God, we have a lot of infantry. I think you get 7 if you're lucky with the throwing axes. Otherwise, it's what, 3, 4, or 5 or something like that. They do much less damage, right? Javelins do 300, 500. You know, unless you get a headshot, you're never... And this guy's just on crack. This feels like I'm using the RTS mod, and I swear I'm not. He's just racing around. It's awesome. I don't know. I don't know if I've ever played a character that felt this fast before. Maybe it's the armor, right? He's not wearing very heavy armor. I couldn't tell you. Anyways, that you get the 250 javelin perk. To me, that's what really lopsides it. Maybe they'll just nerf that, and then it won't be as lopsided. But once you can start insta-killing every single target you want, even if they hold their shield up, doesn't matter their armor, doesn't matter how good a unit they are, that's where things really get lopsided towards javelins. Now these guys are starting to stack up over here, right? So we can bring our attack dog division over here. We've got our archers here. We can also have skirmishers open fire up here, right? And just start firing tons of javelins into the back of the enemy. We've got to watch the main gate, but I've got an incredibly strong division here. The Nords should be masters of defense once you get a decent amount of archers. In other words, once you recruit 50 or 100 Fiend Champs or Khans Guards or something like that, they're going to be just unbelievably powerful at siege because their defenses will be virtually undefeatable, right? Super high strength. Yeah, took I was going to say 4, took 3 throwing axes to kill that guy, right? If I hit him with the javelin, he would have done a backflip and his carcass would have been nailed to the wall. It's so lopsided in favor of javelins. I know guys want throwing axes to be better, but it's just because you want something doesn't make it true, right? I want to have a menage a trois with like Natalie Portman and shit like that, and just like throwing axes, it ain't happening. Get the fuck out of here. This little bootlegged. And of course, we can enter combat. This guy with such cracked out combat speed, I feel like I can do whatever I want. This is surreal. I really do feel like there's something broken with the game right now. Maybe these are just optimal perks. He doesn't even have 330 athleticism. What is he going to run like at 330? It'd be Usain Bolt, hold my beer. I mean, I can just rocket in here and kill guys anytime I want. If guys attack me, I'm simply going to be able to run away. And I don't know if this is a change with 1.32 or what, but my character just feels like I can just have some of this and I can just run up and hack guys and there's no way they can catch me, right? We can just come in here and blast guys and they come after me and I just run away. It's not even close. What's weird is earlier in this campaign, this guy was moving slow and I was getting killed everywhere. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Maybe it's bugged. I mean, yeah, good luck hitting me, boys. I just run, like I'm 20 feet away from that guy, like in 1 second. Anyways, I'll stop talking about that shit. Oh shit. Enemies totally packed over on this side here. We've got this Murderers Division 3rd Corps. We can join them, of course. And look at this shit. I just feel like it's parkour on crack, right? Just running around. Oh, someone turns their attention to me. Here, let me just run away from you guys. See ya. I'm gonna go kill your friends before you even know where I went. It's an awful lot of fun. Oh, shit. Wow, I was talking a ton of shit, and I don't know what happened, but I just insta-died. I wasn't paying attention to my health. I thought I had plenty of health. I don't know. Anyways, sometimes you look like a bitch on YouTube. And I gotta say, fellas, until you have a YouTube channel and you have hundreds of hours of content, you don't realize how often you're gonna make yourself sound like a dipshit. It's fortunate that I'm good at Bannerlord. Otherwise, I would just feel like an absolute weak bitch. Almost like this archer. Is this one of our companions? She's doing 12 and 16. Talk about a weak bitch. But this enemy's cooked here. We're spreading out skirmishers. The key is that first division is not going to break down, right? Those are Huskarls. And of course, Isaac that made us this custom mod. I haven't mentioned him, I think, in a little while. Let's mention him here for a potential episode. This guy made this mod. He got obviously a little inspiration from some of the release details from Tale Worlds, and this is something you can download. It's compatible with 1.2. It's compatible with 1.32. It doesn't break your save game, and it can give you effectively a little bit of a tactical preview of what it's going to be like to fight the Norse, right? Obviously, it replaces Sturgia, so if you want to play Sturgia against the Norse, you're going to have to wait. But this is a great way to experiment with playing the Norse. With this gal's just yelling left and right. AI just routed here. They couldn't take all the rocks off the top of their head. But it's a great way to get an idea of what it's going to be like playing the Norse. I would suspect this is like 80 or 90% of what it actually is going to be like, as far as authenticity, as far as the strength of their units, the shock troops, etc. Right? We don't have ocean combat, obviously, as we give the middle finger here to this Khazate force. Now we'll look for another siege. This won't be the last siege we do with this Norse mod, but unfortunately for this campaign, we're sort of in the mid to early stages, and there just haven't been any sieges of 3,700 troops, and so this is probably going to be about the biggest siege we can find for an episode, for one of our Norse preview series. So a pretty thorough whipping here, 100 kills. Of course, a lot of the kills are with the rocks. But what's the verdict here, right? I would say the Norse are very strong for defense. And I was going to say, I think they're wildly overpowered once you have Khazate, once you have Battania, once you have any archers. You're going to be incredibly overpowered as we capture the Khan and Ragenvad in the same battle. Pretty ironic. Ultimately, I think there should be huge morale negatives for using so many units from different kingdoms. I think if you made Serbs and Bosnians fight in the same army 10 years after the war, there would have been all kinds of problems. And I don't think it makes sense that instantly you can have Battanians fighting next to Sturgians or Norsemen without major morale problems. Hopefully that's something they adjust. Otherwise, the meta is going to be simple. Lots of Nord infantry and then Battanian Khan archers. All right, friends, we're going to continue this series. I hope you tune back in. Eventually, we will fight the Nords. Please hit that like button on the way out, and I will see you, friends, next time.